There we go. All right, cool. So welcome to the name changed Nathan Theology Thursdays now. I don't know if that's going to stick, but I'm going with that over the Nathan Show. So slight different emphasis on that title. All right. So have you guys read the readings yet? Has everybody read the readings?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Are you reading them now, Jeremy?
Go ahead.
Well, are you working?
I have not read the readings.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Since most of us have read the readings, I'm just going to talk about them a little bit. I won't read them though. All right. So the first reading is from Isaiah, right? Isaiah the prophet, and it's where we get a lot of the basically the premise for the song that a lot of us know. Come to the water. Let all who thirst come to the water. Let all who seek come to the water. Let all who toil, those who are poor, those who are tired, and all and that whole idea that let everybody who's in some kind of need come to the water and come to God and be nourished and fed by God. That's the first reading. The second reading is again by Paul, and we're just kind of going down the Romans, the letter to the Romans, and this is where Paul says, he's encouraging the Romans because he hasn't met them yet, and he's sending them this information before he goes to meet them, and he's saying, look guys, don't be afraid. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Not life, not death, not angels or principalities or anything can separate you from the love of God. Now the caveat here is that there's only one thing that can separate you from the love of God, and not from the love of God, but from God, and that's you, right? That's your own actions. You can choose to distance yourself, to turn away from, but nothing else can. So as long as you have a heart towards God, nothing externally can come in and separate you from that. So have no fear, because that's the faith that we have, and that's what Paul saw in the Romans. And then we get to the gospel, and the question I have as we look at the gospel is, how do we see the humanity and the divinity of Jesus working out in his life and in the gospel and in the things he does? How do we see the humanity and the divinity working out? As Catholics, we believe that Christ is fully God and fully man, right? 100% of both in the person of Jesus Christ. But a lot of people argue, and it's the subject of Christology, what was kind of like at work more? Was he kind of operating more as a divine, omnipotent, all-knowing being, or was he operating under the limitations of a human person and the limitations that we experience on a daily basis? So that's the question before we go into the gospel. The gospel starts with John the Baptist dying and Jesus finding out about it. And I've never remembered that. Like, I've heard this gospel many times, and I've never remembered that it starts with him finding about his cousin dying. So I think it's a really important question, because what happens is, basically the premise of the gospel is he finds out his cousin was murdered. He goes off to pray by himself, but he's been talking a lot, and he's been creating a commotion and buzz, so these people won't let him be alone, and they follow him into his deserted place of prayer, and he has to deal with these crowds of people when it sounds and looks like he wants to be alone. So that's the premise of the gospel. And the question that I'm asking, I think, is an important question, because I think it determines how we see the gospel and how we see the importance of it and how we see Jesus' role in it. Because if we see Jesus as, well, yeah, he was human and he was God at the same time, but he was God, so that kind of trumped all the human, whatever, insecurities or limitations that might have been present, then the gospel's not very powerful in my point of view. If Jesus knew, let's say, that John was going to be murdered, and he knew about that so he could see it, and when it came, it was just kind of like, okay, cool, like that's what happened, I knew it was going to happen, then it's not a big deal. Then maybe he just might have decided to go off at that time and go pray, and these people came, but he knew the people were going to come because he's God, and so he's like, all right, I'll deal with you now. And the whole story kind of loses a little bit of import, I think. However, if we see Jesus as, and obviously I'm kind of biased towards this is my personal view, if we see Jesus as definitely divine, definitely God, and yet limited by the confines of his human body. And as the Bible says, he developed in all ways. He didn't just start out as this 33-year-old human being on the planet. He had to grow. So then the story all of a sudden becomes really powerful, because in my meditation of the gospel, he finds out his cousin died. And this is a culture where family is huge, you know? Like the Jewish culture, family is everything. The community is everything. And not only that, but John the Baptist was like his forerunner. It was the last prophet before Christ, right? So he finds out that not only his cousin died, but he's been murdered. And it's, I mean, it's got to be a big thing. I'm thinking of like cousins I have now. I'm about the age that Jesus was. I'm 32, and you know I'm young. People are not supposed to be murdered when they're in their 30s. You know, there's a problem with that. They're never supposed to be murdered, but you know, and so he must have been distraught. And the Bible says he left to be alone in a deserted place. He went where there was nothing. He went where there was no market, there was no shops, there were no people, and he went to go pray. And then the people who had known about him, he had been talking to, followed him there, found out where he was going, and wouldn't let him be alone. And so the gospel says he then started to heal them and to take care of them, right? And that's a huge thing. If Jesus, both God and man, was operating within some kind of confines of being human, what kind of character must he have had in order to be distraught over his cousin's murder, to want to be alone, and then just be bombarded by people, and not only not be mad at them, but then just totally turn around and say, okay, I'm going to take care of you guys. I'm going to do what needs to be done, even though I feel however I feel. So then there's more. Obviously, the gospel goes on more. And as we go into the second part of the gospel, where he goes into feeding the people and interaction with the disciples, the second question I have is, how much do we trust in God's abundance and love, and just trust that God's going to be faithful in times when, especially in times when we are down and when we are distraught and when things are looking really bad? So the gospel continues to where the disciples, wanting to be good friends of Jesus, were like, hey man, you're tired, you've had a really bad day, this is not a good time for you, we want to help you out, we want to protect you, it's late, send everybody home, there's no place to get food in this area because it's all deserted, send everybody home, let them take care of themselves now, you need to take care of yourself, let them take care of themselves. And Jesus is like, no, we can do this, and we're going to feed them, right? Tons of people, we're going to feed them. How? Who knows? So he's like, what food do we have? 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he gets the food, and the gospel says he prays over the food, he looks up into the heavens, blesses the food, and then he distributes it. And again, the question of divinity and humanity comes to play, I think, because even though he's God as well as man, I'm wondering if he was ever scared, that these miracles wouldn't work out. If he was ever scared, even the littlest, that he was going to like fail, you know? He had 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed a bunch of people, and he just trusted. I mean, yes, he's God, but he still was human, and he had to trust that God was going to provide. And so I think it's really interesting. And I'm really excited about these readings this week, because I'm thinking about the progression from Pentecost to now. Pentecost was talking about the Holy Spirit overcoming fear within the disciples, right? Also, since Pentecost till now, Paul is continually telling the people how to live, what to do. We have some references to the Old Testament, Moses telling the people what to do, how to live, how to act, and then we have Jesus in the Gospels in the past couple of weeks telling the masses what about the kingdom of heaven and what it is and what it looks like. And in this reading this week, he kind of brings it all together, especially in this time of despair. He's experiencing this really horrible thing, and yet he's just told the people that the kingdom of heaven is 3 things. It's the field where the wheat has been sown, and the weeds have infiltrated, and the field represents God's patience and God's forgiveness and God's mercy. It's also the mustard seed that grows into this huge bush and protects the birds of the sky. And so the kingdom of heaven is shelter and safety. And then it's also the leavened wheat, which feeds a multitude of people. So we have forgiveness, shelter, safety, and abundance and nourishment. And Jesus, in this time of despair, is showing all of those. He's saying, even right now, when I'm feeling horrible possibly, I'm going to be forgiving, I'm going to be merciful, I'm going to be loving, I'm going to protect and shelter you and heal you, and I'm going to show you abundance and nourish all of you through feeding you when it looks like there's no food. So he brings all those together, and my final thought is, again, the first question about the divinity and humanity is really important, because if we focus on God being, or Jesus being God, but also being very, very human, then it falls into question how we should act in a similar circumstance. When we're feeling lost, when we're feeling desperate, when we're feeling like nothing in the world is going right, how are we called to act? Are we called to say, well, Jesus was God, so it was easier for him to act this way and to be loving and to be merciful and to be giving abundantly? Or do we say, Jesus was also man and called us to be perfect as he is perfect and as his Father is perfect, and to be charitable and to be loving and compassionate? And so if Jesus can do it, I can do it also. And then figuring out how to do that. And the last thought is, I think it's interesting that even Jesus, who was God, in addition to being man, had to get nourished before he could nourish others. He had to go to a place of solitude and get connected with the Father again before the people came and he could give everything he had towards them. So the first reading from Isaiah, talking about, come to me, all you who labor, all you who are weary, all you who toil, that's not only for us, it was for Jesus at the same time. And he listened to that, and he followed that. He came to God with his problems and with his worry, and with that newfound spirit, with that renewed spirit, he was able to then give to everybody else. So those are my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Well, I find it really extremely fascinating, the point that you brought up about how his humanity affects his perspective on the situation. I was thinking about it while you were talking, and I think it's just one of those questions that is astounding. And I think maybe a clue as to where his mind was and how God sees these things when he's in human form. I think a lot of it seems to me that a lot of it can be looked at through, in terms of focus. Because I believe, and this is based off my human bias, I believe that it wouldn't be very possible to be able to be a human and have unlimited focus. But I think that if God were in Christ's form, I think that he was probably limited in focus, just like anyone else, with all of the mysteries of the universe open to him, but also only really having the same amount of focus that maybe the average 30. You know, I mean, honestly, he very well could not have known in his present self that John was going to die. I mean, he could have very easily thought of John and then known John is going to die today. But I honestly feel that maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's when he is focused on that's when the truths of the situation reveal themselves. I think possibly the reason why he went elsewhere for that reason is just so he could grieve, so he could be by himself. And he was so focused on the loss of John, about that sadness that he felt, that it really didn't occur to him that he was going to be there with other people. You know, that they were going to follow him, that he was going to have to feed them. But the moment they say, oh, send these people away, he suddenly is in focus, and he sees 5,000 people that need to be fed. and he knows where his role is. And I imagine, like, I can't really put myself in the shoes of the Son of Man, but I think that if I were in that situation, it would almost be very palliative to be able to help other people when I would feel so very lost or at a loss. Um, I think what's really fascinating about this story too is um, in the shadow of this event and how Christ must be feeling. He basically mirrors the what was to become the Eucharist. He blesses the bread, he breaks it, he gives it to his disciples, who give it to the people, and the disciples eventually become the priests of the church. And I think it's beautiful that in this dark time he yet again shows an image of the Eucharist, of our communal feast. I think it's a really, really powerful reading.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, and I like that. I like that image. You know, when we're in the Spirit, when we're one with God, especially those dark times can be turned around and made into something that's more that's better than we could have ever imagined. Especially those dark times, and that's kind of cool. Like the church was born out of suffering to a certain extent, but it was born out of suffering because the Spirit was at the center of it and God was at the center of it. And I think that's kind of the key. You know, Jesus a couple of weeks ago in the Gospels was talking about the different types of soil, right? And basically, he spent 30 years cultivating his own soil within himself so that he was constantly producing good fruit, like nothing but good fruit, right? And he did it for 30 years. He prayed for 30. He prayed, I imagine he prayed every day of his life, um, and that, and I think, I don't know. For me, the point is, to whatever extent I can do that, to whatever extent I can get close to that, that's the extent to which I can be Christ-like. You know, if I can do the things that Jesus himself had to do, it wasn't like he's not, it wasn't like it was like a magic trick. It came easy to him. I think he had to cultivate his own spirituality just like we do. But he did it, and he did it from the moment he was born or could think or whatever, and so to the extent that we can do that is the extent that we can be like him, and that we can even do things like that where, in our own moments of despair and of sorrow, we can be a blessing to the people around us and a conduit for God's grace and love in that situation. Yeah, Mom.
Oh, can't hear her. Mrs. Stell, I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure if you were talking or not. I think you're on mute, maybe.
So if you hover over the window in front of you and you click on where Nathan's face is, um, if you click on the microphone button, maybe that'll help. Nope, it says you're muted now, so it wasn't muted.
Okay, so mute is your, yeah. Can you try talking now?
Oh.
No, I can't hear you. Hold on a second. Let's see. No. Okay. Hold on. Okay, try unmuting yourself again.
Oh,
Oh no. Hold on, hold on.
saying right before you came that sometimes there's some issues. So
But keep working on that, Mom. Just keep working on that and try to talk. And if at whatever point I hear you, I'll let you know so that you can say what you wanted to say.
or maybe you could call her and put her on speakerphone.
I could do that. If nothing else, I'll do that, definitely. Oh, it's so
You disconnect and reconnect.
because I can't hear you, but it's really entertaining trying to read your lips. And I don't know if Jeremy's on either. Like I see his face on the picture, but I don't see him. He's not.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. Do you have a clue why she might not be able to be heard?
It could be anything. I like the idea. Just disconnect, Mom, and reconnect.
Okay, try that.
She said, "I will try that."
I got that. I totally got that. Totally got that. Sorry. While she's doing that, do you guys have any other thoughts while we're waiting?
Well, I was actually interested in the question you asked about seeking God out in the moments of despair and darkness, and kind of how, I don't know if I'm misinterpreting your question, but how it is that we approach God, and how it is that we get closer to Him when we're in those moments. And I think, kind of going off what you said about focus and humanity of Jesus, and maybe I'm just, reading into it way too much, but it seems to me that he kind of, well, I mean, if my cousin was just murdered by a greedy, evil king,
Evil.
I would probably go to church and be like, God, why did you let this happen? And I think that maybe human Jesus kind of thought that his family was a little bit protected. I mean, if I was human, I would be like, if I was him, like the Son of God, and I would think, hey, well, my husband and kid, they're safe, right? Because who I am, I'll be able to protect them. They'll be okay. I don't have to worry about my family so much. I can worry about all of these other people because the Lord provides, and the Lord will take care of my family, and I'm doing His work. And, it's possible that Jesus might have felt a little bit angry or a little bit betrayed or a little bit upset. I mean, if He was truly human, which we believe, those are really human emotions. And I think what's amazing to me is that He was able to transcend all of that He may have very naturally been feeling, and instead do what He had to do and fulfill His mission and help these people and feed these people and give of Himself so completely. And I think that kind of that's what we're called to do as Christians and as Catholics, when we're in a moment of despair and when we're in a moment of downtroddenness and when life is really hitting us hard. Maybe it's not so much about, and I say this even though I'm very bad at it, maybe it's not so much about being mad at God and being like, why me, and help me out, I'm a good Catholic. God, come on, don't you know who I am? Like, whatever. And instead, pour ourselves out a little more and see how we can help other people and be more open. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the, I mean, and your thoughts on that are kind of the whole point of this exercise. It's what, what's between the lines. What am I seeing? What am I reading between the lines of the readings for this Sunday? And like, what if I allowed myself to really meditate on this? What's God telling me? In my innermost being, and that's kind of the whole point. I think it's really interesting. I remember thinking that a long time ago. I remember thinking about, like, God gives grace to those who love Him, right? And at the time I remember thinking, just that I'm protected because at the time I felt like I was really strong spiritually and I was in a very good place, and I was thinking like I'm protected because I'm like God's son and God loves me and He wouldn't let anything happen to me. And then someone told me, he's like, and yet God's son Jesus still got crucified. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And the point is, I am protected. I'm not protected, but I'm protected in the way that God wants to protect me. I'm protected in ways that I might not necessarily think or imagine. And but then it's like, even if I do die, as long as I do it in a way that's kind of like with the Spirit, if I'm living with the Spirit, if I'm living really kind of following my own discernment and my own ability to follow God, then if that leads me to death, well, that's what happened to Jesus. So what better footsteps to follow? And if it doesn't, then that's great. But yeah, that idea that protection doesn't necessarily mean avoidance of bad things. It means like a life of grace and maybe even a death with grace. But yeah. Hey, can you talk, Mom? Are you there? Can you talk now?
No.
No. Oh man, this is great. Yeah, I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna call you. I
Here,
wanna.
actually, let me call her. I can. Actually, I don't know if I can. You can invite her into the Hangout and dial her number.
What do you mean?
You can add someone to the Hangout. I'm not allowed to, but you can, and you can call her number to add her when you add
Oh,
her.
cool. Okay, let me do that. Yeah, yeah. Hold on.
Nathan, in the chat, your mother said, I'm reading a message that states that the moderator can control my audiovisual settings.
I was trying to do that and I don't know how. Hey, dude, hold on. I'm trying to put her number in. Am I supposed to like use? This is gonna be a horrible live video. I apologize to anybody who's watching this online after the time.
Really good to do it.
Hold on. I'm trying to do it. Um, Man, good grief. This is ridiculous.
We'll smooth everything out eventually. We just need more practice.
Seriously, yeah, it's not really doing it, Jeremy.
We'll do a mic check before next time. Your mother says, it's within the control room, in quotes.
Yeah.
There's something on the left side over here. It says
I
control
am the
room.
voice of Lois.
Yikes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on a regular Hangouts call, you can add people, and on the add people box, there's a little link on the bottom that says call a phone number. If you click that, you can just dial a phone number.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to do that here.
Ah,
I don't know why.
well,
That's fun. Great.
Call her on the phone.
Yeah, I think I'll do that.
just
Yeah.
put her speakerphone.
Yeah,
Old school.
yeah. Hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna call you, Mom. I'm glad we have a professional production going on here.
It's fine.
Okay. All right. Let's see. You getting that? Oh, I think we're gonna get some feedback. Oh yeah, we're getting. This is horrible.
I'm going to mute myself. That'll remove the feedback.
Yourself? Are you sure? No, I think it's.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's us as we come through the phone. So.
Oh, you want to try it, Mom?
Oh, good.
Nope. Wait. Try it again. Yeah, but hold on.
Hey Nathan, if you tell mom to mute, that will stop happening. She should mute her video.
So everybody needs to be muted except for Nathan in order for that to work. But
No, but actually, could you hear her?
No. Well, yeah, we did, but it was going back and forth.
Oh, really? Okay. You heard that whole thing, though? Did you hear the whole thing?
No, none of it. 'Cause
Ah,
you were muted, right? So her sound is coming through you. So if
Yeah,
you're muted, we can't hear her.
yeah, we gotta figure out how to do that.
She just has to mute. Actually, she should just hang up the call. Like she should stay on her phone, but hang up the other call, and you're done.
Why?
Google call.
hang up the hangout.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and do that. Yeah. Go ahead and hang up the hangout. Yeah, there you go. So here, there we go. Oh, yeah, good grief.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you guys can hear now, right?
Yay.
Why didn't you tell me? Oh my gosh, I'm here like thinking that like you guys were like listening, and oh my god.
We thought you were doing something on purpose.
Yeah, we did.
Hey, thank you. That's great. Faith.
Well, now, Nathan, you get to act as interpreter and say everything I said.
Oh darn it. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. Basically, she was saying now that the volume works, basically she was saying that her experiences in times of loss and despair and sorrow, one of the things that helps her get through that is actually turning it around, like turning her focus around and focusing on others, and not allowing herself to be too self-involved for too long, because then it just kind of like spirals downward. And I definitely kind of feel that. And she was bringing it to issues that are existing now, the immigration issue, the refugee issue with all the people who want to come in to the country, and a lot of the country is saying no, there's no space, there's no food, there's not enough resources, and she's reminding us that hey, we're totally lacking in faith as a country that those things will be provided, and we're totally lacking in faith as people that where God has provided so much for us, He'll definitely provide if our hearts are open for them. Is that kind of like an accurate summation?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I can definitely see that, and I know for myself, I realized that at some point, when I was feeling really bad, it was completely counterintuitive, but I only felt worse if I tried to get myself to feel better. The only thing that would help me actually feel better is if I forgot about myself and focused on somebody else, and that was it. And it was a weird thing, but very, very true, and always worked.
Precisely.
I think that's dangerous also, right? Like, I think it's really easy to be in a bad situation and use. I mean, it's a tool like anything else, right? So you can use it in a healthy way, and you can use it in an unhealthy way.
Sure.
I think it's like a common thing in marriages that are not working well is that, like, it's no good. It's like you just don't want to be there, so you go someplace else and you put your energy into something else and you use that as an escape, right? And you can pick church as an escape, right?
Yeah.
And it's still unhealthy, right?
Wait. But you're talking about two different things.
Well, wait. Hold up. And one example, like I dated this girl that a long time ago, and she was a widow, and she was Jewish, and apparently in the Jewish tradition, they talk very specifically about this. There's like rules about everything, and there's a rule about this. So when your husband dies, what you do is you go home and you sit in your house, and you don't cook, and you don't work, and you don't clean, and you don't do anything. You just sit for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then for that week, people they take complete care of you. And after that 1 week, you pick, I think like one thing at home, and then the next week you go to work and you do nothing else. You still don't cook, and people take care. So like it's a way to do what you're saying, Mom, but also it has like a built-in. This is not a permanent thing, and you're going to wean yourself off of it so that you can actually deal with the hurt that actually is important, and it's part of. I mean, it's really important to who we are as people.
Exactly.
No, definitely. I do want to say one thing, though. I want to make one distinction between, I think, what a good thing to do is and what a not so good thing to do is. You mentioned escape. You mentioned If you escape from the issue that you might be having with your spouse, that's bad. If you escape even into something as good as church or ministry, that's bad. But the key word is escape. If you're escaping into something that's not kind of like, that's not the issue at hand, that can be a very bad thing. And I think that when you're doing a healthy thing, we're not talking about escaping. We're talking about, or when you're talking about a healthy thing, you're talking about dealing with what's at hand. You know, if I'm having a bad day, but there's a person in front of me that needs help, he's the person at hand. Do I kind of like indulge in my bad day, or do I say, you know, do I kind of have faith that dealing with what's right in front of me will work its way into me dealing with my bad day? And I think there's a very different thing going on there.
I think it's also kind of interesting because, I mean, going back to the reading, Christ taking care of the people who were there with him. It wasn't just all the things that we've said. I mean, it was also because of how John had led his life with God. In a lot of ways, Christ taking care of those people was doing honor to what John did. In a lot of ways, it was taking the only good, maybe not the only good, but the most obvious good that could happen in that moment. And it was definitely, it seems to me like Christ was definitely reaching out and just saying, you know, I'm going to do the mission here. I'm going to focus on God's work, even though it hurts, even though it's awful.
And in a way, I think I agree with both with Nathan and with Jeremy. When Jake was deployed, I had 6 months of bad days, and it was just like really bad, and it got worse and worse and worse as the days progressed. And actually, in the first month that he was deployed, I decided to go back to El Paso because I kind of thought that if I kind of focused on my family and didn't focus on what was going on, it would be easier for me. And in some ways it was. In some ways I was able to kind of like not really be by myself and not really dwell on how I was feeling and what was upsetting me and how hard I thought that my life was at the moment. And, you know, I was forced to go out and forced to see friends and forced to do all those things, which was good. But then when I got back to Savannah after Christmas, I had no tools. I had no distractions, and I hadn't learned how to live on my own at all. And so I ended up completely just wrecked until he came back.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's okay, it's going well. I think that if I had been able to continue finding a good outlet for my emotions, maybe a lot of things that ended up happening as a result of that wouldn't have happened. And in that, I agree with Mrs. Stell. But in the fact that I didn't learn how to deal with myself, and I basically spent 6 months presenting this, you know, put together kind of persona to everyone, and then coming home and being like totally retardedly messed up, was not good for me. And I get where Jeremy's saying about striking the balance between escaping and actually dealing with your problems and still, you know, figuring out how to get there. And I think that the difference is grace. And I think the difference is actually trusting God in that moment. And it's really hard. It's really hard to say, okay, God, you know, whatever you're going to throw at me, I'm going to accept it. And, you know, this is a scary situation that I have no control over. And instead of, you know, freaking out about it every single moment of every day, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to, you know, be positive. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the essential like term is, or I think what it revolves around is discernment. You know, there's not going to be one action that's good and another action that's bad in a situation like that. It's going to be, okay, is visiting my family the thing to do? Like I think in a Christian life, a life that's really seeking to like follow God and to do to do what I'm on this earth to do at this very moment in this day, it's about discernment. Is the actions I have before me, is this action the thing to do in this moment, or is this action the thing to do in this moment? And you can't really say. I mean, I think only the person who's involved in it in the moment can say what the thing to do is, and their answer might be different for them than it is for someone else. So whatever it is, I guess the final thought, and then we can kind of continue if you want a little bit after I stop the broadcast, but is how do we build up that level of discernment so at every moment, in our highs and our lows, we can know what the thing to do is in a way that's kind of beneficial towards ourselves and others and works out that way. So I'm going to end it there, and I'll continue with you guys after I stop it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.